George Galloway, Workers' Party of Britain candidate, 12,003. I do hereby declare that George Galloway is duly...
Keir Starmer, this is for Gaza. Do I respect the Prime Minister? I despise the Prime Minister. Just suck it up. I won the election.
Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
A new flower massacre in the last hour at the Kuwaiti roundabout in Gaza. Again, Israeli forces opening fire on people scrambling for food. It's the second of those flower massacres. Hundreds died and were wounded when Israelis opened fire in the previous one. Joe Biden answered it by dropping a few loaves and fishes by parachute. And yes, it was for Gaza that I stood and won the Rochdale by-election last Thursday. And right after this show, my good wife and I set out for London, unexpectedly emerging as the leader of the opposition in Britain, where millions of people are behind me. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway. The mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
Rishi Sunak, the diminutive, diminished and degraded British Prime Minister, clearly hasn't assimilated well enough. Otherwise, he'd have known that members of Parliament in Britain are chosen by the voters, by the electorate in democratic elections. They are not chosen by little Napoleon stunts outside the number 10 Downing Street, where standing on an exceedingly tall platform, Rishi Sunak lectured the British people on how alarming it was that they had voted for me, and not just in Rochdale. It has emerged through all the medium possible, in the comments on newspaper articles, in the comments under mainstream media videos. It has emerged in a mailbag, thousands and thousands, and I mean thousands, of pieces of correspondence strong, that the spark lit in Rochdale on Thursday was a spark whose time has come, and the tinder lies all over this country. The truth is, when you've got a political class that demonstrably is two cheeks of the same backside, that almost identical Tweedledee and Tweedledum politics, that millions feel locked out of the political democratic process. Usually they have no choice. Indeed, the parties count on them having no meaningful choice, no ability to affect the political direction of the country either way. They count on that. But when someone comes along with experience, with some God-given ability, and with the credibility to present themselves as a possible winner, a slayer of the dragons, well, poodles of Labour and Conservative, then they are ready to go for it. Nigel Farage proved it with his Brexit party victory in the last European Parliament elections in Britain. And we proved it all over again in Rochdale on Thursday, when people get a chance to whack that two-cheeked ass, they take it, they do it. And it has resounded, that spanking, all over the country. And I know I can prove that I am going to Parliament overnight tonight with the good wishes, the goodwill, and the high hopes of millions of British people, hitherto unrepresented or underrepresented by the mainstream political parties. A beauty has been born. All is changed utterly. And I intend to drive home the point. I will attempt to rise at Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday. I expect the Speaker will call me, as I'm the Member of Parliament with the freshest and biggest mandate in the House. And I'll be asking both of these twins, these diminutive toddler twins, Sunak and Starmer, if they are listening, if they have heard the British people. Early signs are that they have not. Although I want to throw into the discourse my reading of what is currently underway and the reason why I think the British general election will not be long delayed. It seems to me from the little lectern stunt outside 10 Downing Street that Rishi Sunak, despairing of all else, has happened upon what he thinks will be a wedge issue between him and Labour. That wedge issue is the M word, Muslims. Gaza is the proximate cause. But when Sunak said what he said about the threat to British democracy, a bit rich coming from a little man for whom no one has ever voted, and whose foreign secretary in charge of Britain's foreign policy is also an unelected member of the House of Lords. But democracy, mobs, Muslims, all the M's, the fanaticism, extremism, and other bad words that are now attributed to Britain's 4 million Muslims is not random. It is not disassociative thinking. It is not something that just occurred to him on his Royal Air Force flight at great public expense from Aberdeen to London to make what was a blatantly party political stunt outside number 10 Downing Street, something I intend to have inquired into. It didn't just occur to him as he flew from Aberdeen to London. It's a plan. It's a fiendish plan. It's a plan that is pregnant with all kinds of disruption to Britain's social peace. For example, banning marches for Gaza, restricting people's right to protest, cracking down even further on people's right to freedom of speech. And it was a cue, probably a coordinated cue, for the release, the sluice gates to open, for the release of millions of words worth of anti-Muslim sewage in the ever-dependable British media. From the gutter media to the fur coat and no knickers media. All of them were filled with the same basic poisonous narrative that Britain has a Muslim problem, that British Muslims are violent, that they are potentially terrorist, and that these marches over Gaza are radicalizing the population of Britain, contaminating non-Muslims, who of course are the majority in the marches and demonstrations on every single march in the country. This is a very important caveat to make. Most of the people, 73% of the British population, who demand an end to the slaughter in Gaza are not Muslims at all. They are white English people. They are white Scottish, Welsh, and Irish people. They are not people from the subcontinent or other British former colonies. But the narrative is that these people are being radicalized, extremized by the Muslims within. Although, when asked on television this morning, as he was in full flow about it, Jeremy Hunt, I said, the Chancellor of the British Exchequer, when asked, who are these Muslim organizations that you say are hijacking the demonstrations against the war on the people of Gaza every single weekend in this country, Hunt was unable to answer. For, of course, extremist organizations are there none. The vast majority, 99.9% of the people on these marches are entirely peaceful and democratic people. And the notion that by voting for the wrong candidate in a democratic election, that people have sabotaged democracy, endangered democracy, is of course a perversity only possible within the British political class. Voting for the wrong person now appears to be an act of extremism. And so stand by for that wedge issue to be driven home, for a gap to be opened up. Why does he think that might save the election for him? Because of my victory and because of the possibility of other such victories up and down the length and breadth of this country, he has placed Keir Starmer behind the 8 ball. If Starmer comes out fighting for the Muslims in Britain and for the rights to protest democratically, peacefully in Britain, and if he does that, I'm a Dutchman. If he were to do that, Sunak hopes that he will be able to capitalize on the incipient racism that the media will incessantly send pulsing through the British political airwaves and through the election run-up. If, on the other hand, Sunak joins in a kind of Dutch auction Starmer joins in a kind of Dutch auction with Sunak, vying with Sunak for how beastly, how mean, how punitive he can be against the so-called extremists, then a very substantial number of Britain's Muslims will vote for us, the Workers' Party of Britain, and vote for independents who are standing in constituencies from Ilford in the far east of London to Bethnal Green in the heart of the city of London, in the city of Birmingham, throughout the northwest, Bolton, Oldham, Bury, Tameside and Greater Manchester, Rochdale, of course, and many, Blackburn, many other places. If it's an election in which Starmer and Sunak are vying as to who can be more vile about the Muslims, then we will pick up the votes. Starmer will fail to win seats he had banked on winning, and Sunak might, against all odds, emerge as the Prime Minister again. But in so doing, they will scar the face of British politics. They will scar the face of British society. They will risk social peace in the country, and they'll make Britain as degraded and diminished as the two leaders of the main parties have become. There'll be more of that in the course of the show. There's no royalty on the left, but if there was, Craig Murray and Abby Martin would probably be the King and Queen, although both are happily married to other spouses, I quickly add. We've got Craig Murray on to talk about British politics, about the noxious, poisonous state of British politics. Noxious and poisonous, not for the reasons that the party leaders say that it is, but because of the party leaders, their conduct in office. As someone said to me today, this afternoon, when I was watching my eldest son play football in Manchester, there were more arrests at Glastonbury than there have been in all of the pro-Palestine marches up and down the length and breadth of this country. Never fall for the lie that going out to hold a placard and to protest against the slaughter of women, children, men in Gaza, trapped in a cage, is any kind of extremism. The extremism is supporting the slaughter of the innocents, to which I now turn. I learned from Al Jazeera in the last hour that there has been a second massacre in Gaza, a second flour massacre. A flour massacre is where trucks finally make it into the Gaza Strip and begin distributing flours. Starving people swarm around the trucks in sufficient numbers to be shot like fish in a barrel. It happened last week. It's happened again this evening. I want to ask you if you can imagine a greater act of barbarism than to reduce people to mass starvation, sickness, and disease, and then when they finally have the possibility of the flour to make themselves a piece of bread to eat, tanks, shells, and machine guns open fire upon them. I want to ask you if you can imagine what it must be like to be a supporter of this barbarism. Our political leaders, you in the United States, we in the United Kingdom, you in France, you in Germany, you in all the countries of the West in which most of you are watching this show, can you imagine the sheer evil of your political leaders who support this kind of thing, who declare themselves to be friends of Israel? In the course of the last 150 days, not one single member of Parliament in Britain, from the Labour Friends of Israel, the Conservative Friends of Israel, the Liberal Democrat Friends of Israel, not one of them, not one, has resigned as a friend of Israel, even though the world has seen 112,000 people murdered, maimed, or missing under the rubble over that 150 days. I don't know quite what first attracted all these parliamentarians to become friends of Israel, rather than, say, friends of Zimbabwe or friends of Turkmenistan. I don't know what it was that first attracted them to become friends of Israel. And I sure don't know how, after the evidence of their own eyes of this last 4.5 months, they could conceivably continue to be friends of such savagery, friends of such evil, an evil the likes of which we have not seen since the end of the Second World War, when the glorious Red Army smashed down the gates of all those concentration camps and revealed the depths of the barbarity of the beasts of Berlin. I don't know where this is going to end. A good friend of mine who owns this studio asked me just a minute ago, where's this going to end? I'm afraid I'm not able even to hazard a guess about that. I'm not one of these who restricts my demand to a ceasefire. A ceasefire is a necessary but woefully insufficient condition to end the barbarism of 76 years against the Palestinian people. Indeed, I caution my friends into restricting their demands to a simple ceasefire, because I have lived through so many ceasefires before. The ceasefires never end the occupation. The ceasefires never end the starvation. The ceasefires never end the mass incarceration of young Palestinians in Israeli dungeons. The ceasefires never give the right of self-determination to the Palestinian people, their legal and their moral rights. And so my demands are not only for a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire. We need the complete Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territories. We need the abolition of the apartheid state's hold over the illegally acquired and held Palestinian territories of East Jerusalem, of the West Bank, and of Gaza. And the leaders of the world who claim still to believe in a two-state solution have an absolute obligation now to put this solution on the table. Or the rest of us will conclude that it is a mirage. The rest of us will conclude that it is throwing sand in the eyes of their public, holding out the chimera of a two-state solution to protect Israel and its barbaric occupation, which has been going on now for well over half a century. These are the minimum demands. I myself believe that such a state of affairs would not solve the Palestinian-Israeli problem. For a start, there are millions of Palestinians scattered in refugee camps in the countries nearby and in a town or street near you. In Canada, America, Britain, all over the world, you'll find Palestinian refugees scattered. It's not a solution if they cannot return home to their own lands, to their own houses, to the property that was stolen from them when their grandparents were driven out at gunpoint in an earlier iteration of the kind of savagery you've been watching over the last 4.5 months. But the minimum demands must be pressed home and must be recognized and must be delivered now. A ceasefire, the end of Israel's presence in the occupied territories according to international law, the freeing of all prisoners, hostages, call them as you will, in an all-for-all prisoner exchange, and the immediate establishment of a Palestinian state. What's wrong with that? It's the mother of all talk shows. There is hope. The hope is in our numbers. We're already boycotting all kinds of products, and it's working. They're all reporting significant drops in profit. We need to boycott. We need to protest often, in numbers and with imagination. When we get the opportunity to vote out the parties that are supporting the genocide, we must take them. And if that opportunity isn't yet available in your area, you need to make it. You need to join with people intelligently, shrewdly, in a way that will punish the incumbent genocide enabler. You can link up your church with another church, your trade union with another trade union, your community organization, your nursery, whatever, with another in Palestine. You need to reach out to them so that they know that people in Canada and in Britain and everywhere in the world are thinking about them, because that is important for their morale. We're entitled to feel a kind of gut-wrenching sadness at what is going. We're entitled for our hearts to be broken, but we're not entitled to allow our spirits to be broken, because the people there are depending on our spirits.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, everything's up. The membership of the Workers' Party of Britain has ballooned over the last 3-4 weeks. The following of the Workers' Party portal on social media, my own social media portals, everything is up, up, up. And therefore, I can tell you that tonight we have the largest ever poll that we have ever run. The show has just begun, and 47,354 people have voted. And the question is If you could only have one as your local your local MP, A. Starmer, B. Galloway, which would you choose? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway. You can vote on my Twitter handle. You can vote on the YouTube community poll, and you can vote on the YouTube stream. If you are watching on the YouTube stream or on Facebook or any of the other platforms that allow you to do so, please share right now with all of your friends, all of your contacts. If you want to call the show, if you're in the US or Canada, it's toll free. It's +1 844 944 3344. If you're in the UK or Ireland, again, free of charge, it's 08081965522. And if you're in the rest of the world, it's 44203 966 2625. Craig Murray is an historian, former British ambassador, and now human rights activist, court reporter, and all-round sage, one of the wisest men I've ever met. The Honourable Craig Murray joins us now. Craig, thank you for coming back on the mother of all talk shows. I wanted to ask you if you agreed with me that the most significant thing about the Rochdale by-election result was that the Conservatives and Labour didn't even compete for second place, never mind first. That I won a thumping majority, and in second place was a completely unknown independent. Unknown outside Rochdale. He's an estimable figure in Rochdale, but he didn't figure in the bookies' odds. He wasn't featured in a single one of the pre-election day coverage in any of the features on broadcast or print media, yet he came second. The Tories were a miserable third, and Labour, I think, came fifth, if not sixth. It's a big rejection of the two big parties, isn't it?
It's fantastic, George. And I must start by congratulating you. It's great to be talking to George Galloway, MP, again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You know, you've given a lot of people a lot of hope and a big boost and an understanding that it is possible to beat the system, that no matter how powerful the political class may be, no matter how much they've got the mainstream media in particular under their thumb, the broadcast media, no matter how much they seek to control the narrative, given a chance, the people will reject them. And as you say, the people didn't only elect you, they put an unknown person who I'd never even heard his name until the declaration, to be honest, who came in a very good second place. And they totally rejected, absolutely rejected, both the Labour and the Conservative parties, who are politically identical. And in terms of the actual spectrum of political opinion, if you've got the left at 0 and the right at 100 as your measure of political opinion, then the Labour Party's at 68 and the Tory Party's at 72. That's the kind of range of possible political opinion people have a choice of in the party system, and it's hopefully a harbinger that we can take on from by-elections and into the forthcoming general election, with more people having the chance to reject the two parties. I think that's what we have to hope will happen.
The little stunt I said that Sunak pulled, flying on an RAF jet from Aberdeen to London, for using state resources for what was to be an obviously party political stunt outside Number 10. It was alarming, I might even say beyond alarming, in its content, didn't you think?
I thought it was hilarious. I thought Sunak should be praised for entertaining the nation with his statement that there is a huge danger to democracy. And the danger to democracy is people voting. People must not be allowed to vote the way the establishment doesn't want them to vote. Otherwise, democracy is in danger, because democracy can only be voting for the establishment, and anything else is a threat. So the forms of democratic activity, the normal forms of democratic activity, like leafleting or rallying, demonstrating to show what you believe in, attempting to convince people by argument, and even standing for election, those are all portrayed as being anti-democratic. This is, it's all well on stilts. It's absolutely astonishing. And it is sinister. And of course, it's extremely sinister that the state is declaring its intention almost to cut back democracy or to reduce the space for argument. It was hard to believe what he means by it, unless he means that in some way people should be prevented from protesting or prevented from standing for election if they have the wrong views. It's hard to understand what he actually means as a consequences of what he was saying. But on the other hand, it was so pathetic in its delivery that it's very hard not to laugh at it. And my feeling is that the majority of the British population are laughing at Sunak tonight. It's not that they're not going along with his nonsense.
Although it was carefully coordinated with the media, I can testify to that. There was I thinking I was about to have a victory party, when suddenly the entire British media came in with their cameras, pointing like machine guns, faces like thunder, and sonorously asked me if this was not a dire emergency, that the people had voted the way they had. And then I picked up the newspapers on Saturday. I very rarely buy newspapers now. I don't like trees being cut down needlessly. But I bought them so I could spread them all out on the floor. And it was a tidal wave of anti-Muslim hatred, Craig.
No, I think this was always going to have to be the result. They found that the popular resistance to the genocide of the Palestinians is something they didn't expect. And the reason they didn't anticipate it is, as you know very well, most of the political and media class are sociopaths. They actually don't care about society at all. They only care about themselves. So they can't understand. They literally cannot empathize. Someone like Keir Starmer cannot understand that ordinary people are genuinely concerned about the massacre of Palestinian children, because ordinary people don't want children massacred. And that may sound axiomatic to you or me, but it's very, very hard for these sociopaths to get into their heads that the opposition to what they are doing is a general and natural reaction of the majority of the population. So they've lost control of the narrative big time. And the reaction to that on their part was always to be to stoke up Islamophobia. And that we're seeing that in a big way. And my worry is that we're now going to go back to where we were in the war on terror 20 years ago, so-called war on terror, where we'll see young Muslim men arrested for plots which don't really exist. You may remember things like the Ricin plot, which was front page everywhere, and actually there was no Ricin whatsoever. The fact there was no Ricin was top secret for 2 years. We had the Easter bomb plot in Manchester, where the police announced they'd seized ingredients of a fertilizer bomb, and it turned out the ingredient they had seized was sugar from somebody's kitchen. So I think we're going to see that kind of official ramping up of the Islamophobic narrative, and we may even see, agent provocateur or false flag terrorism by the authorities. That's where I think they have to go next, having lost control of a narrative. So these are very, very scary times.
They are, and of course, you can get real terrorists too. One of the things which puzzles me that nobody in the media is willing to grasp is that people like thee and me are trying to encourage Muslims to follow peaceful and democratic paths, political paths, by voting for people like thee and me. I recall very well your epic battle with Jack Straw in the constituency of Blackburn in the immediate aftermath of the Iraq invasion and in the midst of its occupation. We were the people saying to Muslims, we know you're angry, you're right to be angry, the best way to be angry is by joining the political process and voting. But of course there are real extremists on the rocks, siren voices, seeking to lure young Muslims onto those rocks of sectarianism, separatism, and even violence. Does it surprise you that nobody, not even the so-called liberals in the likes of The Guardian, The Observer, and so on, ever seem to give that a moment of thought?
Yeah, that's true. And when violence does happen because people are driven beyond endurance, then they never give a moment's thought to what actually caused it and the fact that this doesn't occur out of a vacuum. And that, of course, relates back to what happened in Israel, Palestine on 7th of October, where you have a people basically driven crazy by continued oppression, by situations of siege, by repeated killings, beatings, detentions, and rapes of the population by an oppressive colonial power. And that, of course, is going to result eventually in a violent reaction. And if you look back through history, if you look at the history of the British Empire, for example, you find that, you know, wherever there was a local attempt to resist occupation by the British forces, you then have atrocity stories. You have the Black Hole of Calcutta, for example, which we were taught about at school, and those kind of atrocity stories, which do relate to terrible incidents that happened, but they are the outrage of a colonized, exploited, and brutalized population trying to express themselves. And the Mau Mau rebellion would be a more recent one. And those narratives are then always used by the occupier to demonize and dehumanize the occupied population and to justify what they call the civilizing mission, of course, to say we are a superior culture, we are superior people, and look what these awful people do if they're not kept under in conditions of slavery. So I think we are liable to see violent reaction caused by this terrible oppression. Of course, we condemn violent reaction when it harms innocent people. That's not the way we want to see people go at all. We want to channel it into political action, effective political action. But the causes of the violence are never ever addressed by the liberal media.
Finally, Craig, in your long experience, have you ever found a conundrum like this one? Israel is invading and has long been besieging the Gaza Strip, courtesy of the United States of America. American weapons, American money, American diplomatic and UN cover, vetoes, and all the rest. And the same power which pays for and facilitates all of that then drops the equivalent of one packed lunch per person for one day by parachute from their own aircraft. Because that's what happened yesterday, wasn't it, in Gaza? Biden broke the siege, which he himself is maintaining, and only for the photographs.
Yeah, it wasn't a serious attempt to maintain the siege at all, and it would only be a packed lunch for a small proportion of the Gazan population. And it would be interesting to know how many of those planes which were dropping the packed lunches had previously been used to actually carry the bombs to Israel, because I think you'll probably find that some of those actual same planes had carried the bombs and shells that were killing the people who now they were giving a packed lunch. So that well, the whole thing is utterly obscene. I mean, that was a PR exercise to try to reduce the anger of his own population towards Biden at his support for genocide. And it's a kind of sickening hypocrisy, a sickening hypocrisy. And today we have yet more massacre, yet more killing, and there's no sign of an end to it, unfortunately.
Honourable Craig Murray, as always, thank you for your wisdom here on the Mother of All Talk Shows. If you could only have one as your local MP, Keir Starmer or me, which would you choose? 48,000 people. Can we get this to 50,000 votes cast? It's already the biggest poll we've ever had, but I like round numbers. If you're in the US or Canada, here is the number to call, toll free, +1 844 944 3344. If you're in the UK or Ireland, free of charge, dial 08 081 965522. If you're in the rest of the world, dial 44203 966 2625. I'll be right back with some great phone calls. I can see them lining up. Not only did I win it comfortably, the independent David Tully came second, marking literally a total rejection of the two big parties of the state, the Conservatives and the Labour Party. This is unprecedented. This has literally never happened before. Much of it is unprecedented. This is the fourth town and city I have represented in Parliament since 1987, a record shared only by Mr. Churchill, but better than his because he was elected for the two big parties of the state at that time, the Conservatives and the Liberals, with the party machine behind him. My result is therefore more remarkable even than Mr. Churchill. I look forward to returning to the House in quite extraordinary circumstances where political authority is ebbing away on the government bench and the question marks over the opposition front bench have just multiplied in the last few hours. This will put a fire underneath Keir Starmer's Labour Party, and Labour are now at risk in dozens, if not scores, of parliamentary seats up and down the country, because this is a spark that many have been waiting for. We've shown that it can be done. Others will now try to do the same.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
Let's go to the Kingdom of Fife in my own country of Scotland, where Brian is on the line. Brian, what would you like to say?
Congratulations on becoming George Galloway MP.
Thank you.
In episode 35 in 2020, when Facebook was worth 200 billion, and I informed you that social media was invented in a UK science lab by a Scotsman, and you pointed out that it should have been called Mac Facebook.
You were that Scotsman, I infer.
Yes. You're now under protection as an MP from an IT system that I helped to design, and it's a social media search engine that looks at the 500 million tweets per day and pulls out 2 million of those to look at those to see if there are any credible threats to MPs, the royal family, and celebrities. So I hope that gives you some comfort that there is a system.
I hope so. Brian, it's very kind of you, and I'm glad that you did that, and sorry that your great ideas were, at least financially speaking, nicked from you. I do hope I'm under protection because Rishi Sunak placed me in very great personal jeopardy with the things that he said from government lectern in his spring-heeled boots. on Friday evening. He put a price on my head, actually, and it has caused my family a great deal of fear and alarm. And I'll be seeing the Speaker on Monday. He's probably watching this right now, so let me give him advance notice. If anything happens to me, then a very large number of people, not just in Britain, but elsewhere in the world, will hold the British government and parliamentary authorities responsible for it. So there's been a lot of hot air about the safety of MPs cowering from old age pensioners holding placards in their vicinity. That's not the kind of threat I am under. I am under the threat of grievous bodily harm, like the bodily harm that caused me to wear this hat in the first place back in 2014, or worse than grievous bodily harm. I have 6 children, by the grace of God, 5 of them dependent children. They depend on me. And I now, as the duly elected member of the British Parliament, demand that the authorities ensure my personal security and safety. Thank you, Brian. Yvette is in the United States, in Washington State, no less. Yvette, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Well, democracy is what we need here in the United States. Come on over.
Yes. Are we going to have it? Is there even going to be a presidential election? Will the main contender even be allowed to stand? Will the other main contender even be in a state of cognition by the time your election comes along?
Good question. I'm all for RFK Jr.
How is he doing?
Not, we'll know November 18th.
Yvette, you need to turn your set down, your receiver down, because it's interfering with our conversation. But let me say that if RFK Jr. Was not enraptured by the slaughter of Palestinians in Gaza, he might have had my support too. But such was the ardor with which he backed Netanyahu's genocide that I simply cannot any longer bear to hear his name. Thank you for your call. On YouTube, Keith Mitchell says, your success in Rochdale has made many, many more than just those who voted for you. As Roger Waters' mum says, do the right thing, George. Keep right with those in Rochdale and they will stand by you at the general election. I want to thank the great Roger Waters for his fulsome support in the contest. I want to thank Low Key, our own considerable genius, for coming to Rochdale and performing so brilliantly, so dazzlingly in the constituency. As a matter of fact, I was listening today, and I want you all to write this down. I was listening today to Low Key's track, Long Live Palestine. And I always knew that it was musically extremely beautiful and inspiring. You know, the one with the chorus, Free, Free Palestine. But today, for some reason, in a car, I played it and I listened very carefully to the lyrics, which proved to me again that Low Key isn't just a recording artist, isn't just an indefatigable activist. He is a professorial political genius. So write it down, Long Live Palestine. Watch it on Spotify at the end of this show by Low Key, Lowkey. Pascal Touré says, greetings from the Gambia. I want to take this opportunity and congratulate you on your victory. There you go, all the way from Africa. Thank you, Pascal. Charlotte Burns says, congratulations, George. I hope we don't lose your show. Definitely not. Give him hell. Now, if Dennis Kucinich wins his election, we'll have 2 crusaders in there. It's a start. Well, I'm not that fond of the word crusader, but I get exactly what you mean, Charlotte. Thank you. And best of luck to Dennis Kucinich, who's been a friend of mine for many decades. Back to the lines. Michael in Dublin. What would you like to say, Mike?
What I'd like to say, George, is that I'm humbled and privileged to be one of the people who are going to speak to you tonight to congratulate you. And I want to congratulate you on behalf of thousands in Ireland who've been out with their placards for Gaza and for the children of Gaza who've been slaughtered. And I put up a post on my Facebook congratulating you immediately on your success. And I know that you are, as you said yourself, you were the only anti-genocide candidate in that election. And congratulations on behalf of the people of Ireland.
God bless you, and thank you for that. And up the Republic, long live Ireland. But it is, Michael, a truly incredible state of affairs when the only party, the only one in a by-election in Britain in 2024, which completely opposed the genocide in Gaza, was us. Everybody else, every other party, was in support of Israel and its so-called right of self-defense against babies, twin babies, like the 2 that were massacred last night in Rafah. Thanks, Michael. Let's go to Canada. Paul is in Toronto. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, first of all, congratulations, George, on your victory. I'm sure the people of Rochdale are absolutely celebrating today. For the first time in many years, they've had a real and genuine politician. You're getting it from all ends tonight, because I am originally an Ulster Protestant from Belfast. So you're getting it from the Republic and you're getting it from the North. And I can agree with that fella, Michael, from Dublin, and say, thank you so much, George, for speaking up for the people of Gaza. You've done me proud. Honestly, I had completely lost hope in the political system in my old country, the United Kingdom. But I have to say that you have renewed my hope. I'm proud of what the Irish have done, and I'm very, very proud of you. All I'll say is keep up the good work. As a Christian man, I will keep you in my prayers for your health, your safety, and your protection, and for that string of wee ones that you're saying you support too. But George, you are my pride and joy tonight. And actually, you were the only good news that I heard all last week was seeing this victory. So well done, sir.
Paul, you've no idea how important, how powerful, and how touching that call is for me. God bless you out there in Toronto. Breaking, we have a record on the poll. 50,000 people have voted for the first time ever. On Telegram, 1% of the voters would prefer to have Starmer rather than me as their Member of Parliament. On Twitter, where a big effort was made, 15% of the respondents would prefer Starmer to me. On the YouTube community poll, 4% prefer Starmer, and on the YouTube stream, another 4%. Thank you. Keep voting. You've still got 3/4 of an hour. Let's make this record unbeatable. On the line is Al in Italy, on Rochdale. I told you I'd put Rochdale on the map. Al, welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, sir.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, very clear. Go ahead.
Wonderful. I think congratulations is in order.
Thank you.
Well
Thank
done.
you, sir.
Now,
Thank you, sir.
I have a few quick points. If you allow me, I would be extremely grateful. First of all, your win, I think, was completely missed by most of the politicians and the Zionist propaganda in Great Britain. For the simple reason, they think you won because of Gaza. What an idiot. You won because one of the lady which I saw on YouTube a few days ago, saying that you were the only one who was doing the listening. And that is the problem. Those people, they miss the point completely. They think it's about Gaza. They don't know that they are no longer listening to the British people for what they have to say. And I sincerely believe that's the reason why you were elected. Plus, of course, you're a good man in your stance for Gaza. It's unbelievable. So on the other point, I wanted to say about Keir Starmer that for some strange reasons, all those analysts around the UK, they presume he's going to be the next prime minister. What a lot of BS. He is not. If he keeps going the way he is, there is no way in the world would he be elected as the next prime minister. It's impossible. And just to add to your
well, I'll tell you what,
comment,
clunky Keir Starmer is like the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, if you're old enough to remember it. He moves stiffly. His thought is stiff. His ability to think on his feet and to convey it and communicate it to others is stiff and clunky. I described him when he was first picked as a block of wood, so wooden birds were trying to nest in him. And he hasn't developed at all from that day. 4 years now he's been the leader of the opposition, and he's no better at it today than he was on the day one. So I do think you're right that Labour's lead in the national opinion polls, if you can trust those national opinion polls, is illusory to the extent that it does not survive first contact with reality on the ground in by-elections, even the ones he wins. He won 2 the week before the one he lost against me. But he got fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn got in the ill-fated general election of 2019, and far fewer, thousands fewer, than in Jeremy Corbyn's very successful general election campaign, thrown by his own party, deliberately wrecked and sabotaged by his own party. But in those by-elections, the Labour candidate got thousands more votes than they did under Keir Starmer. So we'll see. I think a hung parliament with no overall majority is a distinct possibility. I hope to be in the mix. Thanks, Al. Clooney is in my own hometown of Dundee in Scotland. Clooney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, George. Yes, I'm in Lochee.
Thank you. Wow, that's where I was born.
I know. And we're very, very happy that you won that election in Rochdale. You will not believe it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
The reason I'm ringing is about my daughter and her partner, who are very passionate pro-Palestine demonstrators, and they were arrested mid-December outside the Crown Plaza, where Keir Starmer was having a Labour fundraising do. And I just wanted to reach out and say that their court case comes up soon.
When is their court case, and what is the charge, Clooney?
It's police assault and resisting arrest, but it was a snatch. It was like a snatch arrest, and it was 4 police. So, you have 4 police coming to you like that, you're not going to stand still. That's a hard one. A man.
Are they pleading? Are they pleading not guilty?
Yes, they are. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of inactive
I hope the decision. I hope the verdict goes their way, Clooney, and please pass my regards on to them. I appreciate your call from not just my hometown, but the very streets in which I was born, in a slum tenement, number 12A Athol Street, where I was born in an attic, sloping so steeply I had to sleep in a drawer, and I'm not making that up. I'll be back with the second hour of the mother of all talk shows after this brief break. Stay tuned. Why don't we suspend all candidates in all parties, in all elections, until Israel approves them? Is that the democracy we want? And we have to ask ourselves, why is the entire political class in Britain in thrall to a tiny little country 2,200 miles away from here, and nothing can be said by anybody here which they don't like? What is it? What hold is it that this little country has on our politics in Western countries? We all know in America it's about money, but the sums of money here in Britain are paltry. By American standards, you'd laugh. Are these people enthralled to Israel for £3,000, £4,000 or £5,000, in which case they're precious cheap? If other lobbyists knew how cheap they were, they'd be moving in and getting a piece of the action. I don't know what the situation is. I don't know why they are so terrified of Israel that they're ready to sack their own candidates in the middle of a by-election. That's how scared of Israel they are. And when this is all over, we have to ask ourselves how, why, when British politics became effectively outsourced to Netanyahu's Israel, whose pleasure or displeasure dictates who can stand, who can win, who can be elected, and what policy they can follow.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Now, the Americans don't do royalty. In fact, they fought a revolution to overthrow the rule of unelected monarchs and kings. But if they did do royalty, my next guest would definitely be in the royal family. She's Abby Martin, one of the finest filmmakers and host of the Empire Files, one of the most impressive journalists and broadcasters I've ever worked with. And I'm glad to say she joins us on the mother of all talk shows now. Abby, welcome back. It's been some time. What were your thoughts when you saw the beneficence of Joe Biden parachuting in some loaves and fishes, not to feed the multitudes in the Gaza Strip? You both you and I know the Gaza Strip very well. You made a wonderful series of films about it. Were you as sickened by me at the revolting fare that was dropping from the air from American Air Force jets?
Well, first of all, George, congratulations on your resounding victory. I think that I could speak on behalf of the world when I say we are thrilled to have you back in office. I mean, look, Joe Biden is a genocidaire. He's a criminal. He's sitting there eating ice cream, pontificating on, oh, maybe we can have a ceasefire next week or perhaps the week after. It's an abomination, as 2.3 million people, less now, since so many scores have been killed. But starvation has taken hold, George, and we know that dropping a mere 28,000, I think, aid packets, food packets, as bombs are also simultaneously being dropped while people are starving to death. What does that do? It's a drop in the bucket. And you have the audacity of publications like the New York Times, who just ran with a falsified story about mass rape taking place, hiring random psychopaths to adjudicate the atrocities on October 7th. And they're writing haikus trying to talk around this nonsense on the heels of this massacre, this widespread massacre where Israeli tanks and snipers opened fire on Palestinians, scavenging, starving to death. George, this is what we're dealing with. It's complete moral bankruptcy from the entire world. And look at two Congress people in our Congress, Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib. They're the only people who have pledged to stop arming this genocidal apartheid state. I'm embarrassed to be an American. I'm embarrassed that this is the political representation that we have 5 months in to this genocide, George.
It is very powerful as you express it. Let's leave, if you like, the superficial politics behind and dive deeper. It has to be a matter of deep psychology for so many politicians in your country and in mine to be as unmoved by what you and I are watching as we are moved by it. What lies beneath it? What's the reason for our politicians being completely unmoved at massacres of infants, at the maiming, amputations, and, heads burst open of little babies being taken to now non-existent hospitals? How is it possible not to be moved by that?
5 months of seeing children shredded apart. I do not know the answer to that, George, other than political cowardice and the fact that these politicians only care about one thing and one thing only, their political careers. You do not get into politics in either of our countries if you are a moral person, other than, of course, people like you. I mean, it is unbelievable and disgusting to see the amount of politicians completely beholden to a genocidal apartheid state, committing genocide. I mean, killing scores of civilians, women, infants. Like you said, I mean, this is a genocidal policy. You are depriving infants of formula and nursing mothers of water. Look, Joe Biden said it himself, and I think he elucidated it perfectly decades ago on the House floor when he said if Israel didn't exist, we would need to create her to serve our interests. And when you look at Israel, I mean, this tiny state, I mean, it might as well be the 51st state. It's an appendage of the US empire. It's a settler colonial outpost, and it's used as a battering ram for US imperialism and its junior collaborators, which is the United Kingdom. So it's sick that, I mean, you see Code Pink, you see 5 months of people confronting politicians in the halls of Congress, marching out in the streets, doing civil disobedience actions everywhere, right? And these politicians remain unmoved. How is that possible? How are you a human being? How is it possible that John Kirby's sitting up there crying crocodile tears for children in Ukraine and is completely stoic as infant after infant are shredded to bits? I can't claim to know, George. I'm sitting here every day wrapping my mind around the medieval barbarism that we're seeing unfold, that really just surpass the human limitations of evil every single day.
It has brought the worst out in our public officials, but it has also brought the best out in our public. There's never been an anti-war movement like the one we have now for an end to the slaughter in Gaza. In Britain, for now, it's almost 150 days, I think. There has not been a single day when there has not been a significant action, even in the smallest towns. I lived until Thursday in a very small town in Scotland where a small number, but a dedicated number of people were out protesting every day. And that's true in every village, town, hamlet, city, throughout the United Kingdom. And I'm certain it's also true in the US.
Indeed. I mean, I was radicalized on the heels of the Iraq War in a post 9/11 frenzy of Islamophobia and just rabid nationalism and unquestioning patriotism. And I think that finally we're seeing a new internationalist anti-war movement that's questioning US empire, finally, that's tying all of these disparate movements together, understanding that no one's free until all of us are free, finally humanizing Palestinians, finally rejecting the dogma of the corporate media, the orthodoxy of US capitalism. It's a beautiful thing to witness, George. It's very unfortunate that there has to be a massacre of this magnitude for so many people to wake up, but I am here for it. I'm here for it. I'm here for the rejection of the two-party system. I'm here for Gen Z saying, no, we're not going to vote for genociders. We're not going to vote for a party that's committing genocide. It's beautiful to see so many tens of millions of people around the world rejecting this, George, despite the detachment and the disenfranchisement of our political system and our representation, the people that claim to represent us but do not. There's such a severe detachment from our government to the people in the streets, and they're depending on us getting tired, right? They want us to forget. Well, no, we see with our own eyes. We're not going to get tired. We know what justice looks like, and we're not going to stop until that's achieved. And that means Palestine being free. It doesn't just mean an end to the bloodletting. It means an end to the occupation, and it means the liberation of Palestine. And it's an incredible thing to see this global movement taking root. And it's not going to stop, George. I think we both know that. And that's what terrifies them.
Yeah, I think that's true. Now, as well as being activists, both of us are also involved in media. Although YouTube, I think, wiped out a lot of your work. Some of the finest work produced in the English language was wiped out by the book burners of the new censors in big tech. But so let's talk about media, if we can, for a minute. Again, one marvels at the ability of people who call themselves journalists to be unmoved by the plight of Julian Assange in a London dungeon, and to be ready to haiku, as you wonderfully put it, for Israel in the most base and degraded way. And you name-check the New York Times, but the New York Times is not alone, is it? The New York Times, all of these television stations, MSNBC and Rachel Maddow and all of these people. Again, I ask, although I appreciate it's difficult to come up with an answer, what moves them? What allows them to sleep at night, knowing as they must, because they're seeing the same videos as you and me. It just seems to have a different impact on them than it does on us.
You know, I always say, George, that corporate media, you know, as we know, is subsidized by the very institutions that journalists should be exposing, right? Banks, oil companies, defense contractors. When you are a journalist getting into corporate media, you are a willing agent of empire. You have to believe in the reigning orthodoxy of global capitalism and of U.S. imperialism. Otherwise, you will not sustain jobs in these institutions. And so I think people like Rachel Maddow, Andrea Mitchell, I mean, Anderson Cooper, we know that he donned a CIA jacket. He tried to get into the CIA just like Tucker Carlson once did. I mean, look, I think it's really simple. I mean, you have to be a true believer in the system, and you have to wash away all of the crimes and atrocities that are being committed in our names, and you have to apologize for them. And I think that we see revolts happening within the institutions, people writing, you know, sternly worded letters, whether it be in the halls of Congress, these staffers, or within the halls of the New York Times saying, this is too much for us. Look, leave your posts, okay? Because at this point, you're an accomplice. Because institutions like the New York Times, the Washington Post, all of these Beltway media publications and so-called papers of record, they are accomplices to genocide. Those who are running the editorial line in these publications should be brought up to The Hague, right? For complicity, for engineering and manufacturing consent among the American public. Because if these headlines were written differently, if the stories weren't buried, the leads weren't buried at paragraph 8, you know, I mean, I think that the public opinion would have been changed decades ago, George. We know how this works. And when you have an institution like the New York Times, I mean, I have to keep going back to that because that's what so many liberals take as the Bible in this country. But look at Judith Miller, you know, coming out saying, oh, yeah, we screwed up in the wake of the Iraq War. And look at them today. They've learned nothing. We have to reject these institutions wholly, right? And once and for all. And I think that's what we're seeing. I mean, generationally, there's such a huge rejection of that corporate line. And, you know, people are finally seeking truth elsewhere and knowing we're not going to change these institutions by asking them to cover us fairly or to humanize Palestinians or Arabs. No, that's not the way it's going to work. because we know that all of these journalists, they have opinions. They want to appear neutral. No, they just couch their opinions in think tanks that are subsidized by the very same bloodlust, genocidal war profiteers that dictate to us what's going on corporate media and these forums and panels. You know, it's sick, George. And I think that we know the way it works. And that's why, you know, previously I went to a network like RT or Telesur to circumvent that bias, but to tell the truth about my country, because you're simply not allowed to. But look at what they did. They banned, they treated us like infants. They infantilized us all by just succumbing to censorship, like they were chomping at the bit to do for so long. Look at what they did to Tucker Carlson for going and interviewing Putin. They said he should be sanctioned, that Putin should not be heard. Look, I think what, you know, I have a lot of disagreements with Putin, but why should we not hear from world leaders? I want to judge with my own mind and to see with my own eyes what people think and what people are telling me about global affairs. I'm not a child, so I don't like global powers and media giants algorithmically dictating and narrating and curating my reality. I can speak and learn for myself. But that's what they're scared of again, George. They're scared of people with free minds to learn and choose for themselves what the truth and reality really is.
Now, Oscar Wilde said we were two people divided by a common language. I say that Britain and its political class are two cheeks of the same arse. You'd say two cheeks of the same ass. But it is true, isn't it, that you've got a choice between Genocide Joe and Zion Don, and we've got a choice between, if anything, two even more midget intellects and political ideologies. How are we going to get out of this, Abby?
I mean, the left is so disenfranchised in this country. We're blamed for every political upset, and you know, they just don't cater to us at all. We know there's no real third-party option in this country. The entire system is completely rigged. At this point, even members of the squad are essentially just institutional obstacles from us attaining anything that we actually want to do. I think this genocide has really revealed plainly who's on our side and who's not, George. I mean, look, there's so many elements that are rigged in the American political system. It's a complete joke. And I think, you know, in the wake of Bernie, I was very excited about the Bernie movement, not necessarily Bernie himself, although he certainly was one of the better figures in Congress for the last several decades, and I think true to a certain extent to himself. But at this point, I think in the wake of that, the millions of people who simply didn't know where to go after Genocide Joe took office, and they picked the top cop on the heels of the Black Lives Matter movement to really just say F you to the millions of people who are out in the streets, the biggest social movement since civil rights in this country. I think that really says it all about the utter contempt that the political establishment has for social movements and for the youth. And look, the youth is looking at the future of this country and saying we're on the precipice of climate catastrophe. Half of the people living in this country don't have enough money in savings. They're living paycheck to paycheck. No wonder half of the eligible voters don't engage at all. But they're just simply going to blame Jill Stein or Cornel West or the young people for not voting for Genocide Joe a second term. And, you know, in the words of my Palestinian friend Ali Abu Nima, he said, look, Joe Biden is our Hitler. So don't tell me that he's the lesser of two evils. Even if Trump would be doing the exact same thing, he is our Hitler. So how dare you talk down to us and tell us, pathologize the left and say, no, you don't understand. Trump could be in office. Well, look, this is already the worst case scenario for so many people, and people who just are moral people. You don't have to be Muslim, Palestinian, right? Or Arab. You simply just have to be a free thinker and someone who has moral courage and sees with their own eyes what is going on. So I think Joe Biden needs to be and will be punished at the ballot box. And there's really no other avenues to do so politically other than what people are doing, getting out in the streets in the millions, right? And that's what needs to happen. We need to shut down business as usual, George, and we need to keep going until they listen to us, until they are forced to act on our behalf. And that's the only way social change has ever happened in this country. Voting is secondary. Voting happens once every 2 to 4 years. The real change that happens is the people who are out in the streets every single day, all day, making it happen. And we will continue to do so until we have a viable future.
Amen, amen. I just know, I can see it on my screen. People are asking where they can find your work now, Abby. What's the best place for people to go to follow you?
Go to my social media. I'm at Abby Martin on Twitter. You can go to earthsgreatestenemy.com. I'm in the throes of a new movie, George, exposing the totality of U.S. military pollution. It started off as a project about carbon emissions and how the U.S. military is completely exempt and one of the largest contributors, equivalent to 140 countries, but it goes so much farther than that. So we're exposing the entire system. It's been in the works for 3 years. It's coming out this year. Check it out. And also GazaFightsForFreedom.com, available in several languages. Please spread the word. Empire Files on YouTube is where you can see all of my interviews and short documentaries. George, thank you so much. Much power to you and much respect.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine. Love to all the family. That is the great Abby Martin, journalist, host of the Empire Files. Quick break, and I'll be right back with your calls for the rest of the show.
There's a group of people in Twitter who are daily posting discussions about Gaza, Lebanon, what's happening, news updates, aid for Gaza, and trying to enlist the help of Jordan and France and any other regional entity that will help get more aid into Gaza and all of Gaza, all of Palestine, for everyone who suffers. So I want to request that everyone who is listening to this go to your local council meetings and peacefully request that their representatives at the local levels do this, because it works.
Thanks for the call, Pia, in Uruguay. I'm a free man of the city of San Francisco, awarded to me for my work on Palestine, on the steps of City Hall itself. So it was a particular delight for me that the San Francisco Council voted by 8 votes to 3 to demand a ceasefire. And that decision didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of campaigning to force the local authority representatives to vote.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
So who would you like as your local member of parliament? Keir Starmer or me? You can vote on that right now on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my Twitter, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. 51,712 people have already done so. Got about 20 minutes left to get your vote in. Bella is in Birmingham, and she's up next. Go ahead, Bella.
Hi, Bella. Congratulations to your win. I would like to say that you were voted by the people, all the people that wanted you there. The other person, Starmer, Rishi Sunak, they weren't elected by the people. And I think you should broaden the horizon. I think I want to work for you in Birmingham and actually help your voice coming out of what's happening in Palestine. Hello?
Well, God bless you, Bella. Our headquarters are, in fact, in Birmingham. That's where the Workers' Party is based. And we'll be standing in at least 3 parliamentary constituencies in Birmingham, maybe more than that. And so please look us up online at the Workers' Party website. Join us. Put your name forward as being someone who wants to stand for public office. We have to do it. We have to have candidates everywhere. No genocide there. should be left uncontested to take office either in a local council or in Parliament. Bella, thank you. Marcus is in the Netherlands on Rochdale. Boy, have we put Rochdale on the map. Go ahead, Marcus.
Hey, George, nice to speak to you. Congratulations. I am calling from Holland, just on the outskirts of Amsterdam. I'd like to say I've been watching you on and off over the years, the things that you stand for, been watching you on YouTube. It's fantastic. And I was in Rochdale, actually originally come from Haywood, which is just around the corner from Rochdale. I was over there a few months ago. I think I was at Wetherspoons, having a little drink there as such. And I'll be honest with you, I got lost in Rochdale. It's been a few years I've been there, and I met two gentlemen who were Muslims. I'm not being racial or anything like that. And me and the missus, my little son, 5 years old, lost. I said, look, guys, could you help us get to such and such? And these guys, they actually walked us all the way to the pub. And I was like, you're not going to murder us or anything. I was just joking, of course, just joking. But these guys were also a little bit apprehensive because me and my missus, we're really open and really friendly with everybody. But I just had this feeling about these guys. But they were good guys, they were good lads. And I'd just like to say to those guys out there, thanks for looking out for us and thanks for taking us. So a lot of respects. My concerns with you, George.
Where did they take you? Where did they take you? Yeah, hold on. Where did they take you? To the Regal Moon?
No. What it was, we parked up. I haven't been in New Rochdale for years, and I needed to get to the Wetherspoons. I had no idea, and they were these two guys, and they said, "Look, can you help us?"
It's called the Regal Moon. Anyway, go on. Sorry, go ahead.
They walked all the way through Rochdale streets, dropped us off, and I was like, "That is amazing," So they've got some good people in Rochdale, and definitely up north.
Lovely people, wonderful people.
Hey, George, what about? Let's say if you're going to make a big wave. How is it going to be? I know that you said you was a bit worried about your safety. I mean, do you think it's possible that you're going to be caught in, you're going to be creating some big waves? I'm
yes,
just worried
I am.
about your...
That's my job. But then I'm not myself scared of anybody, only of God and sometimes my wife. I'm not afraid for my own safety. I'm afraid for my children's safety, my wife's safety, and for the well-being of my children should something happen to me. And I now have the right to demand, and I will tomorrow morning around about 9:45 a.m. Demand of the Speaker that I get the protection that is now necessary. He says for all MPs. Well, if that's true for all MPs, it's doubly true for me, because Rishi Sunak, with the backdrop of the British state, 10 Downing Street, on Friday, standing on a plinth, on a lectern, put a price on my head. He virtually put a target in the middle of my forehead. And I've been attacked before. I could have been killed before. And if I'm killed now, then it will be right to hold the authorities responsible for it directly. So I'm hoping that, Mr. Speaker, if you're watching, that you will afford me the police protection at all times that I now require. And if you don't, then should, God forbid, anything happen to me, the blame will lie with you. Marcus in the Netherlands, thank you very much. Azar is in Coventry and wants to talk about Rochdale. My goodness, everyone wants to talk about Rochdale. Azar, go ahead, mate.
George, congratulations.
By the grace of God, I'm good. Thank you, brother.
Congratulations. And Rochdale's very lucky. I wish you have a candidate in Coventry. So if we can vote right
well,
for
we
you.
will, Azar. We will. The West Midlands is a big target area for us.
Please keep my number and let me know. I'll be your campaigner here in Coventry. Always, 24/7.
God bless you.
So you cheer me up.
Azar.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much. I was hoping, the God's gonna send somebody to put Rishi Sunak and Starman on his place, and you did. You did.
I did, and I will. You can be certain of one thing, Azza. They're not looking forward to my coming through those swing doors again on my 7th parliamentary term. God bless you, and thank you. I'm very, very grateful to you. King Baluchi says you talk of Sunak as if he were Moses. Galloway, that must be the best quote of Galloway ever. Thank you, King. Bram SL11 says, I'm not even in the UK and I'd take Galloway as my representative over anyone in the US at this time. I'm currently volunteering for Dr. Jill Stein's campaign. I'm fully behind Dr. Jill Stein. She's a friend of mine. User WL1MZ5SW6F. Times are a-changing. I've always voted Labour all my life. Now, no more. Good luck to the Workers' Party of Britain. Go kick the backside, George Galloway. I'll be watching in anticipation. Watch your back. Thank you very much for that. Let's go to Jamaica. Who wouldn't? Where Robert is on the line. Robert, welcome.
Thank you so much, George. And let me tell you, you have been my hero for many, many years. And I wanted to congratulate you on your wonderful win, but even more for your integrity, courage, and steadfastness over the years. When I saw you blow away the Senate committee that brought you up on all those false charges, it was an amazing case where a man charged with what would I say?
Wrongdoing.
Yes, bunched up charges. And you turned the tables on them till in the end they were just dying to get it over. But apart from that, George, I'd just like to also give a shout out to Abby Martin. She was brilliant. I would also like to recognize Assange, who brought all this to our attention. And I'd like to show respect to Aaron Bushnell. It's unfortunate that he burnt himself, but his courage, his feeling of humanity is what pushed him to it. I'm sorry he did it in a way. I'm very sorry he had to do it, because if there was justice, he would not have thought of that. And then finally, I'd like to finally in recognizing people, I'd like to remember Rachel Curry. There are thousands of others. Let me say, though, that I think your victory has opened a pathway to return true democracy not only to the UK, but to the West. This is what's significant about your victory, because the two parties are no longer listening to the voters who put them there. They ignore them, and in some cases now they even threaten them, because of you were threatened and you were voted in. The people who are peacefully demonstrating was threatened by the Prime Minister, in my view. And so it is showing an alternative of what persons will have. And I hope that your victory will encourage people to run either with your party, or it doesn't matter, George. What you need are people of integrity who are independent of these two captured parties, is what I would say.
Well, it's a very beautiful and powerful call, Robert, in Jamaica. And I do think indeed that it is a clarion call across the Western world, because our part of the world, a small part, tiny part of the world's population, has ruled the roost for hundreds of years across the globe. But the ordinary people of Western countries have had mere morsels of the benefit of that exploitation and domination. We have nothing in common and gained nothing from the slave owners and the exploiters and the colonizers and the makers of empire. A tiny sliver of our populations grew fat upon that. So it's about time we reclaimed the West. It's about time the ordinary people of Western countries rose up and took the power from those who have exploited all of us, including, of course, in the glorious Caribbean. 1062-ish says it was like watching Scotland score a winning goal. Get it right up your Starmer. Well done, sir. Thank you. Somebody said it was like Archie Gemmel's goal against the Netherlands. Alice Rose says the UK needs to ditch first past the post. At least with proportional representation, the two parties have to make coalitions. On line one is Matt in Portland on Sunak's meltdown. Go ahead, Matt.
Congratulations on your win. I mean, I've listened for years and what you said about Palestine and everything. You've been saying this for the longest time, and nobody seems to listen to you. I mean, those who don't seem to get what you've been standing for, when you said, yeah, this is about Palestine and the UK. Free Palestine means a free UK. They don't listen. Yeah. Like Lawrence Fox said, I like George, and I've talked to him, but he seems to be about Gaza and not the UK. He has not listened to what you've said. You've said for the long time, if we free Palestine, it'll free the UK, it'll free America, because as long as we get them out and we allow these people, we get out of the Middle East, then we will be able to thrive as a country and the world will thrive. But the elites, like you said, it cracked me up when Sunak lost his shit over you winning. I was laughing so hard. It was like when you put the tweet of him in the high chair, standing on the high chair, I died of laughter. And and it was just funny watching them melt down and that reporter trying to, get you for, they were saying that there's reports that your supporters were harassing and threatening. You shut that guy down quickly. And so many people were like on Twitter going, congratulations, George, like Richard Medhurst and Danny Haiphong and the Duran and Garland Nixon. And all these people are like, and Angelo was saying this, and even Jimmy Dore did a segment congratulating you on your win, the due dissidents. I mean, I was like, and then I noticed, this video on YouTube from this, I think he's British lawyer in The Hague, explaining thoroughly dismantling Israel and saying why it should be dismantled and Palestine should be restored because of what the UK government did in 1917 when they illegally seized it after they convinced T.S. Lawrence to go tell the Arabs to free themselves of the Turks, of the Ottomans, and they would be left alone. No, they came in, they started seizing Syria land by creating Lebanon, taking Palestine and Jordan, and then, and holding on this for, the Rothschilds come in, and instead of taking Germany after World War II, which was where these Jews were from Europe, take Germany and make that Israel. That's what they should have done. And Richard Medhurst said that. If they want to create Israel, create in Germany or split it in two and make half of it Germany and the other half Israel. That's what they could have done. No, they had no right to come in there and take this and do what they've done, and then not to recognize Palestine, and then say, we're going to recognize this illegal occupation and make it and allow it in the UN. And it's just like what the English did to the Irish. Ireland isn't even totally free because Northern Ireland's still under the British Empire. And then what they did to India, and they pray, people go, the colonists in America fought for their freedom. But when the Irish fought for theirs, they called them terrorists, just like they call Hamas. Or when the Indians fought against the British Empire, they called those people terrorists. And it's like whenever you fight an occupation or oppression, you have a right to it. It's in the UN Charter, but, the only way to truly is to end, I love watching Richard Medhurst. He says, fuck Israel, fuck the Zionists, and they should replace the word Nazi.
No swearing, Matt, stop swearing. Thanks for the rest of your call. Imran is in Glasgow. Let's hear from him. Imran, go ahead, sir.
Hi, George. I just want to say I've never ever phoned in any show before. And quite honestly, I've never really been a super fan of yourself. But every morning and every day for the last 100 days, I turn my phone on and I see babies starving. And this fascist government, this fascist people that have taken over our country in the UK, these genocide deniers. So I salute you, George. I really do, from the bottom of my heart. I salute you for standing up for Gaza. I salute you for standing up against those people that have been systematically destroying this country up and down, all the way from England down to Scotland. Our towns, our shopping centres, everything, our high streets completely being destroyed by the Tory and Labour Party. So I salute you, George. And I
thank you, Imran. Thank you. Yeah, I'll quit while I'm ahead. But thanks very much for that. Jacqueline Tackerberry says, brilliant, from the Bay Area in California. I know it well and remember it fondly. Melville Farao says, great win, George. We stand with you. This is from India. Thank you, Melville. Now, coming up, I get to go live with my own good wife. But first, it's Salwa in North Carolina. Salwa, what would you like to say?
Oh, Mr. Galloway, thank you so much for calling back. And my husband and I would like to congratulate you for all your efforts and for who you are. And we've been following your program, Kalima Harra, on Al Mayadeen. We're Palestinian Americans. And it's I don't know what to say, but we are here. And I feel
Salwa, I'm touched. Beautiful call from North Carolina. Salwa and her husband are Palestinian Americans. I have spoken all over the United States and indeed Canada, as far north as the Arctic Circle. And I have found Palestinians everywhere. Salwa is in North Carolina. I found the northernmost family of Palestinian refugees at the Great Bear Lake in Yellowknife in the Arctic Circle in Canada. Yes, that's right. That's how far the Palestinians have been dispersed around the world. Everywhere I have gone, including in that call, I have found Palestinians. And I promised, Salwa mentioned Kalima Hurra, my show on Al Mayadeen TV. It's currently suspended because the whole station has had to go to rolling news about the war, not just the war on the people of Gaza, but the war on Lebanon, which Israel is presently engaged upon. I hope that Kalima Hurra will come back one day, though it may be some time. But it was in Lebanon, in Beirut, in the Fakani district of Beirut, that I promised to the late and great President Arafat that no matter what the cost, I would never leave the Palestinian people alone. That was in 1977. And it's a promise that I have kept. I think now I get to join my wife, who's in another part of the building. Gayatri, what's rattling?
I'm so sorry. I just cannot keep up with all the emails, the comments, everything that's been flooding our social media platforms with congratulations and endless comments on the poll. What a record poll we have.
Yeah, it's almost 55,000.
It is, yeah. And obviously the majority is for them, for you. Those who voted otherwise mentioned Scottish independence as one of the arguments, or just one of the commentaries said, I'd rather have Starmer as PM so that I can walk the streets and throw eggs at him. Well, thank you for that. On Patreon, Blaine Dillman says, in the age of Charlie's, sanity will prevail as long as you're here, George. We had emails coming in from people who were part of the canvassing team over the past month, which is wonderful. There's obviously a connection between all the outlets that we have. Iqbal says, George, you are indispensable, important and precious. Nevertheless, you need to recruit, teach, and train the jewels from the younger generation. Similarly, Jim says, not only thank you for your leadership, but also for inspiring the younger people who need a role model. And of course, this is what we discussed last week. This is it. Your victory.
Well, we were discussing it this morning with we were discussing it this morning with our dear friend Imtiaz, who played such a gigantic role in the great victory
he's our chief.
we have just recorded. I hope we get to see him quite shortly after the show. The point he was making was that you can have a leader, and that leader can even be, quite a good leader, but you need to prepare for the day when, by one means or another, you're no longer able to lead people, only by the example of your work that you've done over the years, etc. You need to produce a new generation of leaders to take your place. In the words of the leader you and I follow, Comandante Che Guevara, what matters is not that I fell, but that when I fell, 2, 3, 4, 5 others rushed to pick up my weapon. That was Guevara, and of course, when they killed Guevara, they thought that they had ended him, but he is flying as a flag, as a badge, all over the world in every struggle for freedom everywhere. Have you got any more, or should I press on? Go ahead.
You've got so many calls coming up, but I just wanted to read this one, which is an email from Tunisia, and it's in French. I will spare you my French, so I'll just read you the translation. Mr. George Galloway, you are triumphantly elected Member of Parliament, not only for Rochdale, but for an infinitely larger constituency called Human Consciousness Without Borders, of color or religion. Bravo for this supreme slap inflicted on traitors and cowards of all sides. Friendship and respect from Tunisia.
How beautiful. How beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably a good note to end our conversation on now. I'll see you in about 15 minutes. Thank you for that, Gayatri. Back to the lines. Adam is in Canada, in Calgary, where I've also spoken more than once. Go ahead, Adam.
Hi, George. Congratulations on your victory.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Well, first of all, I wish you success. I wish your party success, and you really fight to really weed out the cronyism and corruption in British government. What I wanted to ask you is that every day I'm reading and I'm seeing the news, and we've got another genocidal maniac saying some ridiculous crap about advocating for deaths of women and children in Gaza coming out of Netanyahu's party. And they're supposed to be the so-called only democracy in the Middle East. And, we don't have a George Galloway in my country, in Canada. We had one individual who was part of the Democratic Socialist Party, New Democrat Party out of Ontario, who spoke up and called for a ceasefire. No mention of Hamas at all, no advocacy for terrorism, and she was shut down completely. She lost her seat in Parliament, and I just feel like this is endemic in governments around the world. The moment you speak critical of Israel, even if you're Jewish, they will criticize you as a false Jew, a fake Jew, or they will call you anti-Semitic. And, I'm just fed up with it. Even if you don't support Palestinians' rights, as conservatives who are always advocating, stop cancel culture. I see powerful conservative hardliners all of a sudden, excuse my tone, but their manhood shrivels up every time dialogue about Israel comes up. So, where we have some hope with you now and your party standing up for Palestinian rights and standing up against Israel and the censorship that goes on. Do you see, as demographics change, as political dimensions change, do you see this changing?
I really do, Adam, but I acknowledge immediately the bitter, wintry, arid desert that is politics in Canada, where the right, the so-called conservatives, are, as they are in so many countries, actually even worse in the so-called liberal, so-called social democrats. The social democrats, Trudeau in Canada, is so bad that it's almost impossible to imagine that the Conservative opposition are worse. But between the two of them, they add up to a mountain of evil. And it must be exceedingly difficult in a country like Canada, where there is state capture for the prevailing orthodoxy and the new religion of unqualified support, even for the ugly Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel. It must be very difficult. But what is necessary is not just the correct political line, not just carefully choosing leaders as the best available that can be putting forward that political line, but courage. You see, a lot of the political cowardice we've been discussing this evening is directly attributed to fear of losing office and all of the perquisites that go with it. So we must free ourselves from this mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. As the great Bob Marley told us, we must not be in it for the salary, for the seat, for the perquisites that go with that seat. We must be true to our purpose, whether a religious purpose or a secular one. As long as it's a moral one, that's all that counts. Gaza is the moral center of the world right now. You're either with the Palestinian children and their mothers, or you're with the people who are murdering them. It's really not rocket science. You either stand up for the children and their mothers being murdered, or you stand with the murderers. You choose. That's what I say. Neil is in London. Go ahead, Neil.
Hi there. George, it's Neil here. I'm
Hi.
a bit nervous, actually. My heart's going a little bit for waiting for speaking. But, yeah, I got nicked for Gaza
Take your
last
time,
year.
son.
Oh, thanks. I got nicked for Gaza last year, blocking the carriage entrance to Westminster, just as the little Richie was just due to come out. I had a placard that said Shalom, Salam, peace. It was a very simple protest. I got nicked for it, and I'm in Westminster Magistrates Court this Thursday. If anyone would like to pop along at about 2:00. Yeah, got nicked for, it was called the Police Reform and Social Responsibility Act, 143, Section 1. Wow. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I was dressed as Charlie Chaplin as well, because I'm a mime activist, so I didn't do a lot of speaking.
Well,
during the
perfect.
action.
I can't think of anyone better. I mean, other than Gandhi himself, I can't think of anyone better that you could have dressed as Charlie Chaplin. I think the message that you carried was a message that ought to be applauded rather than prosecuted, and I hope that the court shows wisdom and justice on Thursday. And let us know, will you call us back next week and tell us how you got on? If you're still at liberty, of course, that is, as I hope you will be. Monkey Boy says, Britain has gone anti-Semitic loopy. I'm frightened to hail a cab in London for fear of upsetting someone. Mary Poppins has even been reclassified as PG, parental guidance. Go blimey, governor. I mean, that one took the biscuit for me this week. Mary Poppins is now, because of discriminatory language, I don't know, what, towards chimney sweeps? Or was it the appalling accent of Dick Van Dyke pretending to be a Londoner? I don't know. But Mary Poppins has not been banned, but you've got to have long trousers on to watch it now. How astonishing is that? Licha Deck says, vous êtes le meilleur George Galloway. Excellent. Un bonjour de Paris. Merci beaucoup, monsieur. Line 2. Bilal in Rochdale on Sunak and protests. Go ahead, Bilal.
Hi, George. It's Bilal from Rochdale. We've met a couple of times. Sorry, so sorry I couldn't be at your celebration. But yesterday's the outburst by Rishi, amazing outburst. I mean, he was like a petulant child that had lost his toys and wanted to get back at you. He's complaining about the tradition that we have in the UK, albeit I'm not that old and neither are you, of, things protesting such as the Peterloo Massacre in 1819 and the Tolpuddle Martyrs.
Here
and
in Manchester,
what do you call it? The women's voting right, the suffragette movement. Yeah, Emily Pankhurst. I mean, how did all that happen? It was because we are a dissident nation. When we are crushed and we are down, right? We like to respond, and there's no better way of responding by getting out there and marching. And he wants a fascist state controlled by him and his mates, and it's not just him; it's Keir as well. Right? Any politician
you're exactly right, Bilal. I cut you short only because of the hour and so many people on the line, but you're absolutely correct. I love the British people. See, that's a difference between me and some on the left who often give a good impression, at least, of hating their own country, of hating their own people. As it happens, I love my own country, and especially I love my own people, and I have seen the best of them. I have seen it throughout my political life, and I have seen it perhaps particularly over the last 150 days or so. The best of the British are out on the streets demonstrating. When they get a chance to vote, as they did on Thursday in Rochdale, they vote. You can feel it, hear it in this audience as it grows and grows, many of them from Britain. I love our literature, I love our language, I love our football teams from Accrington, Stanley to Aberdeen. I love our sense of humour, some of the humour with which the Rishi Sunak childish outburst, as you point out, has been treated online. I'm laughing out loud at some of the memes that have been so quickly and brilliantly produced in response to it. So I'm in politics out of love for my people. I want the best for them, and I want to do everything that I can to give them the best and what they deserve. Thank you for that call. Dennis Revel says, did you know that an anagram of Rishi Sunak is high risk anus? I didn't, but I do now, and I'll never forget it. Sakar Papa says the Flower Massacre is the modern day Jallianwala Bagh Massacre. 2 colonizers massacring the colonized. How brilliantly put, Saka, indeed. Ibra is in Berlin on the BBC coverage of the so-called IDF. Go ahead, Ibra. Ibra, you there? That's a pity. I wanted to talk to Berlin. So here's the end of the poll. 55,363 votes have been cast. 1% say Starmer, 99% say Galloway. On Twitter, 15 against 85. On the YouTube community poll, 4 against 96. On the YouTube stream, 4 against 96. What a truly extraordinary poll. That's what you call a landslide victory. Ali is in Pakistan. Go ahead, Ali.
Hi, George. This is Ali, and I just wanted to say that you have really made a astonishing kind of victory over here. Not only for the people of Rochdale, this is also kind of like English voice coming out for the entire Muslim community around the world. I can tell you that. That is from the bottom of my heart, that I really believe that even Muslim MPs in the United Kingdom could not do what you do for the Muslim community. Not only for that, of course, you do it for the entire people that you are working for.
The proper, the ummah is all of humanity for me, Ali. And I was accused in The Guardian, I say accused in inverted commas, I was accused in the Liberal Guardian today of seeking to unite Muslims angry over Gaza with alienated white working class people, unquote.
That is a very narrow kind of, those are the politicians, they only
I'm guilty of that,
on...
Ali. Yeah, Ali, I'm totally guilty of seeking to ally Muslim voters in Britain with alienated white working class people in Britain. I'm totally guilty of that. I make it my life's work to unite all the communities in Britain who are losing from the kind of country, the kind of government, the kind of system which we have here in Britain. And I will unite such people as long as God gives me breath. But just think about this. This is posed as an accusation that I am seeking to unite angry Muslims and alienated white working class people. 2 records tonight. First, it was a record number of calls. Brace yourself for this number. 677 people called the show trying to get on this evening since 7 p.m. 677. It was a record poll, 55,363 votes, and a record YouTube audience. By next Sunday, this show will finish at 3 million viewers. And I'd like to thank every one of you, not just for tonight, but for the last 330 or so episodes. I give you a solemn and binding promise that this show will continue. It is the mother of all talk shows. It is the open university of the airwaves. It is global. We've had calls from Canada, from Jamaica, from the United States, from Scotland, from England, from Ireland. This is a global university of the airwaves. It's in the English language, but the parts of the world that are listening to us are far wider than the Anglosphere. Our podcast is in the charts, sometimes topping the charts, in places way outside of the Anglosphere, like Tunisia and like the United Arab Emirates. Rochdale was trending yesterday in the United Arab Emirates. In Lebanon, Rochdale was trending at number 1. All over the world, people have been waiting for the kind of breakthrough that we made by the grace of God and much hard work by hundreds of people in my constituency who worked in cold weather with warm hearts for the cause of haq, the cause of justice, the cause of right. And I'll continue to do my political work, whether on the airwaves, on my feet in the House of Commons, on my feet on Tuesday evening at 5 p.m. on the steps of the Town Hall Civic Centre in Catford in Lewisham, where John Hamilton, our candidate for Mayor of Lewisham, and I will address you at 5 p.m. on Tuesday in Lewisham in Catford on the steps of the Civic Centre. I will be behind a bulletproof screen, I hope, provided by Mr. Speaker, because I am troubled that Britain has a Prime Minister so reckless, so cynical, that in order to set up a general election campaign, which I believe to be more or less imminent, to set up me as the face and the Muslims in Britain as the body to be whipped or worse in the course of these next few weeks and months in order to cynically divide our people, channel hatred against a section of our community and against me in particular. I regret it very much that he did that. I think he'll be judged very poorly for having done so, if not absurdly, as one caller earlier pointed out. But I give him notice. I give the whole political class notice. I am not afraid. I believe that I'm doing God's work, and I'll continue to do it as long as God gives me breath. And so I can tell you that, God willing, I'll be back on Wednesday at 7 p.m. with the midweek mother of all talk shows. So please be there. You are here tonight in record numbers. Let's keep that record up. Follow me on all my social media platforms. Support me on patreon.com/George Galloway. It's been marvelous. I hope it was for you too.